It's 1999. You head to your local video store, likely a Blockbuster, and you see on the shelf an anime called Video Girl I. You then head home, likely rewind the tape because the other person didn't do so, and start watching the series. This is how many people experienced this anime back in 1999 when it was released in North America. And I know most people won't know what a VHS player or a VHS tape is, but I actually remember buying those as a kid because a lot of my favorite anime were on VHS tape. So let's rewind our tapes, pray the video store has the last 4 episodes in stock, and find the damn remote in the couch because it's time to talk about Video Girl I. Video Girl I is a 1992 OVA from the people who brought you Ghost in the Shell, Production IG. It's also from the original creator of DNA Squared, which I did a video for in Season 3 of Anime Friday, Masakazu Katsura. The story follows Yota Motuechi, a lovesick teenager who is in love with his best friend, Moemi Hayakawa. And one day, when he reads a VHS tape, he goes home to watch it, and the woman on the cover comes out of the TV. Her name is Ai Amino, and she is a video girl who are made to help people through difficult situations. Ai agrees to help Yota in his pursuit of gaining Moemi's affection. Will Yota succeed?
That's it! I'll stay with you for as long as it takes.
What the hell?
One of the things I loved so much about this anime is its art direction. Of course, it follows the same art style of Masakazu Katsura, who has this distinct look to his manga and anime. In other words, I think this anime and his DNA Squared series look like quintessential 90s anime. Just looking at it brings back so much nostalgia, and there just aren't many people with his kind of art style out there. That being said, he did the character designs for Kanesaisu Shoujo, and they're pretty damn mediocre. But at least back in his day, he was making some really standout stuff, especially for being mostly in the ecchi genre. And for a 90s ecchi anime, it looks really good since it came out in 1992. The scene where Ai Amino violently rises out of Yota's TV is an example of how good this anime really looks. And as well, the scene looks almost like a horror scene straight out of The Ring or something. The shadow on Ai's face, how the TV static lights the scene, giving it a horror flick kind of mood lighting, it's pretty good.
What the?
Surprisingly, this anime has a lot of psychological undertones, and by the last episode, the anime really nails a lot of its more in-depth storytelling. And this isn't too surprising for these 90s OVAs to go off the rail a little bit and have your blow-off episode be a crazy philosophical trip of beautiful art, climactic storytelling, and weird themes being explored. Evangelion? I'm looking right at you, man. And I think Video Girl I does a pretty good job with it too. The last episode, as an example, takes place within some weird realm where Ai Amino is trapped at the top of some glass staircase he has to climb. At this point, Yota has traversed a plethora of things, like dealing with his puppy dog love for Moemi and other various obstacles.
It's time for you to decide. You can only go after one. Why not let your heart choose?
My meeting Moemi first. Does that mean I love her? Then what about I?
Yota then begins his climb, and this immediately you know is something special, as when he takes steps, the glass breaks and he cuts his legs. It's a brutal image, and you can immediately understand what the author of this original material was going for. What I believe he wanted to symbolize is how love is difficult and you will get knocked down, like how Yota falls onto the glass and it shatters, but he's hanging on by a thread as the glass cuts into his fingers, and when he gets to the top, he gets what he truly desires. No, not an anime girl as an award, but a true love, which is something that for him and for all of us will mean different things. This is something I wish the show would have elaborated more on, as the episode already goes into heavy philosophical meaning. But we know Yota wants to love someone, but the true reasons remain unclear beyond he's in a romance anime. If they succeeded in selling that, then I think this whole ending scene wouldn't have just been a great scene. It would have been a highly memorable great scene.
Let go. No! You can't make me! You can't take my love away from me!
Initially, after viewing, I wrote this OV off as having a generic plot. Not a bad plot, but generic. But as I started to think more about it, I think labeling it as generic may be a little bit too harsh, as this anime explores some relationships and struggles rather well in just 6 episodes. An example of this, of course, would be the 3-way deadlock between Moemi, Takashi, and Yota. And also, to a lesser extent, Ayamano is in this as well. The idea behind this love triangle is been here, done that, but it's interesting because it goes in a little bit of a cool direction. Takashi is Yota's best friend, and while he doesn't like Moemi, he decides to pursue a relationship with her anyway so that Yota will basically grow a pair and take her from him. It's very much playing on the idea that love is war, which is tiring, but not in the way the show further develops this idea. Instead of Moemi accept this and love on him, she's aware that Takashi really doesn't like her at some point, and on top of that, you have Takashi playing the role of a bad guy to see if he can get something good to come from this. I just really like that dynamic between the three, because Takashi almost unknowingly gets what he wants, but not the way he wanted it to happen. Yeah, he grows a pair and steps up, but it's Ayamano that he chooses, and in the end, everyone gets what they need, not exactly what they want. Yota has Takashi drops Moemi like a rock, which is what she needed to hear, to be honest. It's very fascinating to me, at least, and I very much enjoyed how that developed. But once again, I wish it went just one step further and showed how that affected their relationships. Maybe, for example, have them fall out. Moemi hates Takashi, Yota can't trust Takashi, and Moemi feels a little bad for how unaware she was. But alas, 6 episodes.
If you're afraid I'll be mad, don't be. Hey, look, until you're sure you know how you feel, you're not doing any of us any favors. That would be my answer.
I will be the first to admit, though, this anime doesn't hold up well when it comes to many things. Just one example of this is the voice acting, and while you have talents like Brad Swale, who plays Light and Death Note and Rock and Black Lagoon, it doesn't manage to hold up to the test of time at all. Any given episode of this anime has flubbed lines, stiff delivery, or just some really questionable writing. And even the smooth voice of Maggie Blue O'Hara, who never really excelled at the anime she was part of anyways, never really had a great moment that her acting shined through. But even then, I can't ignore what I did enjoy about the dub, and that's some of this delivery is really excellent, even though a lot of it is mediocre at best. An example of this is the last episode when Yota is climbing a glass staircase. Brad Swale easily nailed this delivery and how I would imagine it being if it was actually happening. And overall, the dub isn't one I'd say is good, but it's not unwatchable either. I also think it's important to some people to watch this dub, because to me, and to those people, this is the authentic experience. This is what it was like watching anime in the 90s and the early 2000s. You have to sift through these awful dubs to get to the Dragon Ball Zs, the Cowboy Bebops and Evangelions. It's just the way it was then.
Do you think it would be okay if we walked together?
Have it your way.
Some other minor issues I have is the pacing and some of the character designs. Starting with pacing, I think the 6-episode format for this story wasn't the worst thing for it, but it's obvious they had to cut so much. Looking at the manga, it is a whopping 15 volumes and 131 chapters that ran from 1989 to 1992. I mean, I couldn't imagine what it was like in the boardroom trying to draft these scripts into just 6 30-minute episodes. So I understand the cuts they made, and if I read the manga, I would love to talk more on how they likely came to those cuts, but alas, I haven't read it. As for character designs, let me just say this. Masakazu has some of the most beautiful art in manga and anime history. His designs are quintessential 80s and early 90s Japanese. They're beautiful while still retaining their grounded feel. I mean, just look at some of this art for the manga, and now going over to the anime, they retain that Masakazu look to them. But here is my issue. A lot of these characters have the same face, and while they were able to hide it in DNA Squared fairly well, they weren't able to do that much in Video Girl I. Both our titular characters, Amano and Moemi, have virtually the exact same facial features. Now, of course, they have different hair, which sets them apart, but their faces look identical. And as well, if you're a fan of DNA Squared, Amano looks a lot like the main heroine in DNA Squared. Will this affect your viewing? Likely not, but I still think I should bring this up as it is something that was on my mind.
Let's call this one Third Saving Grace. Even though you've got a reason to be upset, you don't let it get you down. That's great.
Overall, I think Video Girl Ai is a good 90s OVA, just like the other good 90s OVA excelling at doing a couple things really well while lacking in virtually every other facet. And there are just things that you can't take away or diminish. For one, the character art is absolutely stunning, at least on the female side of things. Like I said, this mangaka's art style is something special, and he is an absolutely legendary artist in his own right. And as well, the philosophical undertones that help propel a fairly generic love story into a solid romance, albeit with issues. And speaking of those issues, they shouldn't be ignored simply because it does a couple things well. The pacing, as an example, is a huge issue, as they had to try and fit 130 chapters into just 6 episodes. That's a tall order that I don't think anyone can deliver properly or sufficiently. But if you like 90s OVA and DNA Squared or his other works, this is an absolute must watch. I guarantee you that you'll have fun with this anime either way. And with that being said, check out the previous episode on Outlaw Star, but also tune in next Friday, as the next episode will be on the legendary cult classic OVA Gunsmith Cats. Tell me in the comments below, have you seen Video Girl Ai? Tell me if my review convinced you to go and watch this series. Thanks everybody for watching the video. Bye bye.